Okay, there's been huge blowback from some to my interview with alt-right leader, white nationalist Richard Spencer. And every time I do an interview with a controversial figure with deplorable views, there will be critiques that I am giving someone a platform that doesn't deserve a platform. That if I'm having someone on at all, I am effectively promoting their views. There's a fair criticism or debate to be had about whether general, broader interests are better served by exploring where these horrible views come from versus pretending they don't exist and sort of no platforming them. My view, and you know this if you've been watching the show for a while, is that I am of the belief that we should actually find out where extremism comes from and figure out what are the sources, what are the bases for these beliefs. Now, when I do these interviews, if you're familiar with the show, you know that I don't yell and scream and tell the person that they're a horrible person. I don't know what that would achieve. What I seek to do in being cordial is try to figure out what is the basis for the beliefs of these individuals. And I think, Pat, people who are familiar with the show tend to know that that's the strategy, whether it's the God Hates Fags people, Glenn Miller, the Quran burner, whoever.
I also just disagree with the fact that you're giving them a platform. If you enabled him to speak for maybe half an hour unchallenged, I could see that being giving him a platform, but you're challenging him the whole way.
Yeah, and again, challenging. Some people could fairly say, David, you didn't challenge him loudly enough because you weren't screaming at every single thing he said. You know, if I do that, we won't even really have an interview. It will not really be a conversation where we could learn anything. Unfortunately, a few progressive, liberal media people really didn't like the fact that I did this interview. One of them was liberal radio host Nicole Sandler, who I know personally, haven't seen her for a while, but know personally. She tweeted, she said a number of things, but it started with, D. Pakman, you seriously interviewed Richard Spencer? Why would you give him the time of day? And it sort of escalated from there. She ended up unfollowing me on Twitter and saying that I was just doing absolutely the wrong thing and that it crossed a line. It triggered a really big back and forth with a bunch of people on Twitter sort of debating. She went on to say, I don't understand giving people like that more room to spread vile hatred. They don't deserve a mic. Go get those ratings. By the way, I've interviewed many people with whom I disagree. Don't misstate my stance. I just won't promote hate mongers or Nazis. It's clickbait. Shame on you. I hope your alt-right listeners love it. I was saddened that this was what Nicole felt about the interview. Then Abby Martin, formerly of RT, currently of the Empire Files, again, someone I know personally, she sent out a tweet last night. There were a number of tweets, but it started with at D. Pakman, my Twitter handle. It's so great you're giving Nazis a platform and treating their ideology as just differing political views. Totally what we need right now. Triggered another significant back and forth that lasted many, many hours. Again, my view is you can't really debate such insane ideas. The point is, let's figure out where it comes from and expose that this is a non-insignificant part, in the case of alt-right beliefs, this is a not insignificant part of Donald Trump being president of the United States. Where do we draw the line if the policy is you don't interview people whose views are really vile? What about a guest that's anti-gay? I find that deplorable. What about someone who says gay people are going to hell, or people who don't care about poverty? That's hugely deplorable. It seems very arbitrary to me to come up with some sort of list of whose views are too vile to ever be given the opportunity to appear on a program. Do you only interview people you agree with? What about far left people who I might share ideological perspectives in terms of policy issues, but who believe that violence is justifiable for political gain, versus me who would prefer not to see violence for political gain? That I think that we're opening up a sort of dangerous door with that policy. Viceland did some ride-alongs. I don't know if it's neo-Nazis or KKK or whatever. They went to cross burnings or some insanity. Does that cause or normalize cross burnings and neo-Nazism? I don't think so. During those pieces, you don't have a host yelling and saying, you're a terrible person the entire time. I think the exposition really speaks for itself. I also talked about some viewers. Again, I think mostly the viewers who are longer time viewers of the show and get the interviews get that this is not a new thing. This isn't new to the show. We did the Glenn Miller interview years ago. We interviewed Terry Jones, the Quran burner, people from Westboro Baptist Church. We've interviewed many extremists, and I have learned a lot about how does someone like this exist in the world and sort of generate their worldview. Last thing I want to touch on, the idea of normalizing. The normalizing thing relies entirely on the idea that the audience is going to be tricked into all of a sudden thinking white nationalism is a really good thing based on some guy having a conversation about it on my show, making pretty horrible arguments, I would add. I don't think that the audience, Pat, is going to all of a sudden say, wow, the white nationalist was allowed to speak. I'm super convinced by him. I think maybe I should look at white nationalism as a
No, of
worldview.
course, our audience isn't going to blindly go along. I mean, I think there could be a line there, but I think the line gets drawn where someone's advocating for violence or making threats against people. It's not just voicing their opinion.
I even think that that's a difficult line because someone could see the interview with Spencer and say, listen, David, he wasn't advocating for physical violence, but the suggestion that races should live separately and there should be a peaceful ethnic separation, that it's ideologically and politically violent. I wouldn't disagree with that. I wouldn't disagree with that, which is why I think even that line, Pat, it's an interesting idea. I think even that's hard to draw.
I guess so, but I mean, Richard Spencer wouldn't even elaborate on how that would be done, how the races would be separated.
Yeah. Keep sending me your thoughts on this. I think it's a debate that I would be lying if I said I wasn't up later than I planned to be last night as a result of this. I mean, really, I think that this is not a good direction for critiques of journalism to go. I guess fundamentally, that's sort of my gut feeling about it.